In this video, we're going to be using regular expressions to process and use external files. So what I did was I created a list of stocks in this file. So what we have, basically just have a bunch of data, and it's not in a very good format. We have some issues with this. First of all, some of these names are in quotes. Another problem is we have a header row, and we also have volume. This is more of a human readable format, not a format that we can use. So we're basically going to process this whole thing and get this list of stocks into a format that in which we could actually work with it. So what we're going to do first is set up our context manager to open the file. So go with open. And we'll go ahead and read the file, f.read. One thing I did forget is to pass in the mode. And the only mode that we're going to need is to read. So we're going to put an R for reading the file. Then if we go ahead and print, and if we save that and run it, we should be able to get all of our data. So what we have right now is this is just one giant blob, stored into a single string. So the next thing that we can do, we can create a function to process this and return us something that we can actually work with. So I'm going to define a new function. We'll call it process stocks file. And we're going to take the entire text in as an argument. Now, obviously, the first thing that we have is a header row. So I'm going to create an empty list for that. And we're going to actually separate that out. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to split by the line breaks. So every line break is going to be a different item in a list. So let's go stocks. Now we could use something like this, the string method. We could use something like that. However, this is regular expression. We're covering regular expressions, and we're going to use that instead. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to import regular expressions. So import our RE, so we have the library, and now we can use it, re.split. And this is very similar to some of the string methods. And the second argument, we need to pass in our text. And I'm also going to create another list called stock info list. Let's go for stock in stocks. Okay, so now we need to keep in mind that the first item, the very first row is going to be the header row. So we need to figure out if this is the header row, and we can use a regular expression for that. So we want a match, and so we want to use our caret or hat character to say if this string starts with symbol, then it should match, and we know it's going to be the header row. And we need to pass in stock. And then we can just populate our list that we created. re.split. And this file is basically, this is all basically separated by tabs. So it's a tab separated value for every single row in this text file. So we want to split by \t is our way of splitting it by tabs. Okay, so if it's not the header row, we want to create a new, let's go ahead and create a new variable stock info row. And we want to also split this by the tab character. And for now, I'm going to create an empty, actually, you know what, let's go ahead and create a new dictionary, stock info. And so now we need to loop through this. So now that we have the row as a separate string, so that's what we've done here. For every stocks, we basically have a line. We're going to need the index. So for IDX, column. And so we need the enumerate method. So we need a little bit wider here. And so we should have our header row populated. So what I'm going to do is create a new variable, header equals, and it's going to be whatever header row of the index. And so once we have that, we can populate our empty dictionary. So stock info. And then so once we have that, we can just simply, after our for loop is complete or done running, we can go ahead and append to our stock info list. And we want to append the stock info. Let's go ahead and comment this out so we can go ahead and create a new variable and process. I'm going to loop through these. So if I go ahead and run that, so it looks like we have a bit of an issue. So line 27, we're getting a none type. And so what we did was we did not return our list. Okay, so this is a little bit more usable now. So we have basically a list of dictionaries. So we have the lookup keys and the values for all of those. So we still have a few problems remaining. For one, we basically have double quotes for all these values for volume. Some of the company names are still in double quotes, like the Goldman Sachs Group. So we need to do a little bit more processing. We also have another issue down here where I think this is an empty line at the bottom of the text file. Yeah, so we have an empty line here, so we need to find a way to get rid of that. But at least we're heading in the right direction. So let's go ahead and fix some of these columns. And what I'm going to do for this is, since it's consistently the same columns that might have these problems, I'm going to create a couple new variables. So fields remove quotes. And so one is going to be the company name. And the other one's going to be volume. And then we also need to format the amounts. So we need to convert from the human readable numbers that have the commas in them to just storing it as an integer. So let's call this one fields. Oh, let's call this format amount. And so that one is going to be only volume. Okay, so inside this for loop where we're doing all this work to basically populate our dictionary, let's just create a little bit of space. So we can check the header if it's in that column. So if we are looping through that column, so we're going to go if header in fields remove quotes, and we can use the the regular expression substitute, the re.sub method. I'm going to use single quotes here because we are actually substituting the double quotes for an empty string, and the item that we're passing in is the column. Now we need to do another one for the volume, the amounts. And so the volume, we're actually using this twice. So by the time it gets here, it should have already removed the double quote. So all we need to do now is format it as an integer. And we can use re.sub once again. And so we're basically substituting the comma for an empty string. And so this is also a place where we can convert this to an integer. Okay, so another thing over here, this really looks like a mess, so we can make this look better so we can have an easier time reading it. So we're going to import the pretty print library. And so all we need to do is change our method down here to pretty print. And so it's going to put every key value on a separate line to just to make it just to be much easier on the eyes. So if we go ahead and run this, so this is much better. So our volume is basically a single integer amount, and all of our company names are just enclosed in a single quotes instead of being enclosed by double. Some of them having double quotes also. So we did fix that. So we have one lingering problem here. The last item in the list, it's taking that empty line and creating a new dictionary, basically with nothing in it. There's several ways we can fix that. What we're going to do is look at the length of the info row. So when we get to this point, since we are making a row and splitting this, the value of this is actually a list that looks like this. So we can just put in an if statement, if length. So only if it's greater than 1 do we want to add to our list, add to our stock info list. So let's go ahead and tab that in. And if we go ahead and rerun our file, so that empty row is not in here anymore. So now the key point here is that now we have something we can work with. We have dictionaries. We can look up any key value for any of the stocks. Let's say we want, for example, company names. We can create a list. So let's go S company name. And then if we print that, and then now we just have a list of all the company names. Whereas before we would have had a hard time just going through that whole text file if all we wanted was a list of company names.